The topic of climate change is often a controversial one and one with many unanswered questions. The latest question: how will climate change impact the oceans? A new study published in the science journal Nature February 15th found that the ocean's worldwide oxygen content declined by more than 2% between 1960 and 2010. While 2% may not sound like a lot, it doesn't actually take much of a drop to threaten the state of the oceans. There are many driving factors behind oxygen depletion: warming temperatures, the ocean is becoming more stratified, reduction of sea ice, and so-called dead zones where fish can't thrive. David Baker, University of Hong Kong Swire Institute of Marine Sciences says, quote, "The oceans are really a mirror of human health. If they're sick and dying, then that's the future of humanity as well." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Rachel Latham.
Nearly 5,000 metres above sea level on the Tibetan plateau is Namsto Lake. To the Tibetans, it's a holy site, and thousands of pilgrims walk around its shores every year. The lake is partly fed by the glaciers.
The glaciers are a symbol of the seasons. When the weather gets warm, the ice melts, and in winter it gets cold and turns back to ice.
But while their way of life has largely remained constant, their environment is changing. Over the past 15 years, the lake has expanded by 50 square kilometres, a consequence of increasing temperatures, which are causing the glaciers to melt at an unprecedented rate.
We have some of the small glaciers are disappearing from Changtang region, and some of the lakes increasing because the water coming more from the glacier side. So the global warming, there is a strong impact on the Tibetan plateau, particularly for the glaciers.
In fact, the glaciers have shrunk by 15% in 3 decades, triggered by some of the fastest temperature rises on the planet. Environmental pressure groups are warning that the effects could spread far beyond this region.
The plateau is the source of many of Asia's most important rivers. If estimated sources of drinking water dry up even more quickly over the next few decades, the lives of tens of thousands of people living in towns and cities downstream, as well as the society and the economy, will face a serious threat.
Activists have described the situation here as a climate change alarm bell. They're calling on global heads of state to act before this holy site is changed beyond recognition. John Brain, TRT.
It's the largest tropical glacier in the world, and it could be gone in 40 years. These scientists say that global warming has helped shrink glacial ice in the Peruvian Andes by 40%.
In a similar period of time, we went from losing 2 square kilometres in 30 years to losing 9 square kilometres, 3 or 4 times more area in the 30 subsequent years.
The melting ice is filling the lakes below to the brim and creating hundreds more. Almost 1,000 new lakes have formed in Peru in the last 40 years. As the glacier melt speeds up, the risk of flooding rises. Lake Palcacocha holds a lot of water, and a rim of sediment is all that holds it back. In a region prone to earthquakes, an avalanche could trigger a lethal torrent of water down the valley to the city of Huaraz, home to 150,000 people. The town of Laguna has installed sirens and prepped escape routes. Educating school children of the risk is part of the curriculum. And emergency practice is a priority.
What we fear in this school is that the lakes could burst and that our students would be hit. We have about 170 students from lower and middle school.
Towns and cities also rely on glacial melt for their water supply. 1.5 million people in the capital Lima receive only an hour's supply each day. While these rapidly vanishing glaciers may become a symbol of global warming, for the people of Peru, the changing climate is a very real threat. Sally Ihan, TRT World.
Sea levels around the world are rising faster than any time in the past 2,500 years. That's according to a new study. An international team of scientists has analysed several locations across the world's oceans. They say that prior to the 20th century, the most sea levels rose at one time was 4 centimetres, but oceans have risen by 14 centimetres in the past century. And that number is expected to rise 10 times faster in the next 100 years.
New tonight, thousands of dead bees are washing up on a popular beach in Naples. And as you can see, not just dead ones, but ones that are alive too. It's so bad, some people are now staying away after being stung while walking the shoreline. NBC2's Delia D'Amber is live at Loudermilk Park Beach, where people say the problem popped up in just the past few days.
Dead bees like the one that you see here I'm holding in my hand are showing up by the thousands on the waterline here at Loudermilk Beach. People who visited this beach today say that these bees, dead or alive, are packing a punch if you step on them.
You don't realize what you're really stepping on.
We try to watch out for them because we know they're there.
Shells and seaweed. What people visiting Loudermilk Beach in Naples expect to see wash up in the waves. But recently, something more painful is rolling in with every wave.
It's just really between the water and the sand.
They're not wasps, they're nice honeybees.
Bees aren't buzzing around the park's sticky trash cans or concession stand. Instead, they're squirming around or laying lifeless on the sand.
I've been stung a couple of times, and at first I didn't know what it was, but I realized, and then I had an allergic reaction. I was like in this area. It was so painful. Oh my God, yeah.
Martha Duff says her painful sting is making her more conscious of where her daughter plays.
It really was kind of worrying, especially that I have a baby. I worry about her running up and down the beach.
Felice Petty isn't planning on going near the water's edge.
Right where he stepped on it.
After her husband stepped on a bee.
All of a sudden he went, ow! And I had to pull the stinger out. My concern is getting stung because I am allergic.
The city of Naples says crews are investigating the problem and will have staff out at the beach Tuesday working to get to the bottom of visitors' questions.
Why are there bees? Where are they coming from? And why are they in a very specific area in the beach?
A bee expert I spoke to on the phone today says this is very unusual behavior for the bees.
Thousands of birds found dead in the Yolo bypass. A CBS 13 viewer sent us these pictures and asked us what is causing this disturbing phenomenon.
We sent CBS 13's Macy Jenkins to Yolo County to get answers. She joins us live now in Davis with what wildlife experts had to say. Macy?
Well, Christina and Sam, those wildlife experts have been collecting these dead bird carcasses from the shore here for the last 3 days. Now, the virus that killed the birds, not a risk to humans, but it is a risk to other birds.
It's just shocking to see that kind of die-off. I've never seen anything like that before.
Walking along the Yolo bypass, Lawrence Campling saw this about a week ago.
Easily hundreds of bodies, hundreds of birds, all dead along the side of this flooded field.
More than 3,700 American coots, birds that look like ducks, all of them dead. Campling took these pictures and started to worry that something catastrophic was happening.
It's something that we deal with on the wildlife area fairly commonly.
Wildlife manager Jeffrey Stoddard says the coots caught a virus called avian cholera caused by a bacteria.
It's something that they carry with them year-round.
So we wanted to know what caused the virus to kill them.
It only comes out when they get stressed, and in this case it's a physical stress.
Like shivering in the cold and being pushed out of their habitat because of high water.
Just like when we get sick, when we're close to a lot of our friends and not far away from everyone else, we spread disease much quicker.
Other birds like ducks, geese, and herons can catch the virus too. So the most important step for wildlife experts, collecting the carcasses to keep the scavengers from spreading it around.
And so it's been wonderful with the wet winter we've had to see all the wildlife come back. And therefore even more shocking to see something like this happen.
Good evening. Just ahead of the spring and summer travel season, we got a sobering update on Zika today. The nation's top health officials warning that the Zika virus appears to be a lot scarier than first thought, spreading much faster. And the United States will soon be in the crosshairs with the mosquito population taking off in the coming warmer months. The National Institutes of Health and the CDC issuing an urgent plea to Congress today to act now to pay for immediate steps to protect Americans. NBC's Tom Costello has details.
Tonight, a stark warning that the haunting images of babies born with microcephaly in Brazil, abnormally small heads and brains, are becoming a very real concern in the U.S.
Everything we look at with this virus seems to be a bit scarier than we initially thought.
The Zika virus is carried by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Until recently, researchers believed it was found in just 12 states. The new estimate, 30. Further north than first thought, though that doesn't mean they'll carry Zika that far. Already, 346 Zika cases are reported all over the country, mostly from travelers who brought the virus home. And now pregnant women living along the Gulf Coast are potentially at risk. Tropical disease expert Dr. Peter Hotez is warning microcephaly could ravage the region like Hurricane Katrina.
I'm very worried that in the areas of extreme poverty, in poor neighborhoods, in U.S. Gulf Coast cities such as Houston and New Orleans, maybe Tampa, that we are highly vulnerable to seeing Zika virus transmission leading to microcephaly cases.
Especially vulnerable, the poor living without air conditioning or window screens near standing water where mosquitoes thrive. Researchers also say unborn babies may be at risk throughout the mother's pregnancy, not just in the first trimester. And Zika can cause other forms of brain damage that may show up years later.
The more and more we learn, the more and more you get concerned about the scope of what this virus is doing.
Tonight, the CDC and the NIH are both urging Congress to provide nearly $2 billion to fight Zika. So far, though, Republican leaders have insisted the White House use money allocated for Ebola prevention first. Now, with temperatures rising and cities already spraying for mosquitoes, health experts warn they need to emergency funding now.
Xinjiang is on alert. According to health authorities there, in the month of January alone, the province reported 35 cases of the H7N9 strain of bird flu, including 11 fatalities.
This is the fifth year that we have monitored bird flu since 2013. The situation is more serious than previous years. Wider areas are affected this year, particularly in rural areas.
So worried are authorities this year that they ordered all markets across the province to hold live poultry trade until further notice last Saturday.
Contact with live poultry is still the major source of infection. Wet markets are very likely to be polluted by the H7N9 virus. The infection rate can be as high as 60% when we examine the samples taken from the markets.
They warn people to avoid contact with wild birds, live poultry outdoors, and pay more attention to food and personal hygiene.
Bird flu is transmissible among people. Patients need to report if they have had contact with poultry before they became ill. They shall be isolated once they are diagnosed.
We're going to move on now to the breaking news this morning. A powerful earthquake hitting the Philippines in the middle of the night. There are deaths and injuries and frantic rescue efforts happening as we speak. And ABC's Bob Woodruff is in the region. Bob.
Well, good morning, Dan. Yeah, this morning these rescuers are now combing through the rubble from Friday's devastating earthquake. A 6.5 in magnitude, the quake just struck in the Surigao del Norte province, which is about 430 miles southeast of Manila, striking in the middle of the night and centered near several densely populated urban areas. The powerful quake just tore through the homes, leveled commercial buildings and gas stations, and sent chunks of concrete from apartments just crashing down onto cars below. Much of the city is still without power, and response teams from the national government are rushing more than 8,000 emergency food packs to families in the harder to reach areas. Now, survivors from the city are now making their way back to damaged homes and businesses. Now, experts are saying that the quake was likely triggered by the Philippines fault, part of that highly active zone known as the Ring of Fire, which makes seismic activity a somewhat routine part of life for countries along its edges. This morning, with visibly shattered roadways and massive cracks running through the airport runways, engineers in several major port cities are assessing the damage and preparing for possible aftershocks.
A powerful earthquake rattles eastern Indonesia, sending tourists and residents fleeing into the streets. Fortunately, there were no initial reports of fatalities or injuries. It happened around 6:30 a.m. local time on Friday, December 30th. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the 6.2 magnitude tremor had an epicenter just south of Tolatanga and was about 44 miles deep. Even people on the popular tourist island of Bali felt the shaking. But the USGS says it's unlikely there will be any reports of casualties or damage. A much different story from earlier in the month. On December 7th, a 6.5 magnitude quake devastated Aceh province, killing more than 100 people. The world's biggest archipelago is no stranger to powerful earthquakes. Positioned in the Pacific Ring of Fire, the country experiences frequent seismic activity. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Molly Real.
Man-made earthquakes provide one more thing for millions of Americans to worry about, according to new research. A report released Monday, March 28th by the U.S. Geological Survey indicates that 7 million residents in parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arkansas live in areas at high risk for man-made earthquakes. These man-made disasters are attributed to an increased use of fracking by oil and gas drilling companies in the U.S. Most of the so-called induced earthquakes are small, but a magnitude 5.6 induced earthquake hit Oklahoma in 2011. In 2015, nearly 900 earthquakes above a 3.0 magnitude were recorded in the state. In 2007, there was only one. It's not yet clear how the new research will affect the fracking industry, but scientists have projected that recent seismic activity patterns are likely to continue into the future. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Cambry Caldwell.
The violence tonight and trying to push that crowd back. They were trying to get various people, agitators, out of the crowd, and as other people came in to try to grab those people.
Ed, are you okay?
Yeah, we're fine, Anderson, we're fine. So just someone taking out their frustrations on me. Right.
So if you need to leave that location, Ed, that's fine. Just let us know.
Yeah, we're gonna figure out what to do here. Give us a second, Anderson.
All right, yeah, we'll check back in with you a little bit. You take care of yourself and your crew. Boris Sanchez is also standing.
Basically, we were following the crowd all the way down to this part of downtown. At one point, people got really agitated. There were trash cans thrown from the top of the mall, and then they came here. And as you can see, people are trying to damage these vans. So far, they've put out. Oh wow! They put out a pepper spray. People are running from it. Jerry, get out of there! Jerry, get out of there! So as you can tell, the situation is totally out of control. So there were agitators that were getting pulled in by police, and a couple people started sitting down, but police grabbed one, and that's when everything just went out of control. You can see police are trying to control the situation, but there's tear gas everywhere. People started launching the tear gas back at the police. Hey, watch out! There's gas under you! Get out of there! There are more cans of tear gas getting thrown into the street right now, Anderson, and we're trying to get out of the way. So there were two lines. Ah, my eyes. There were. Anderson, I gotta send it back to you.
All right.
And we start with some breaking news this hour. People in the Urals in Russia have seen burning objects raining down from the sky after a meteorite exploded above the Earth, causing a meteor shower. Eyewitnesses reported several blasts rocking the region, and there's long trails of smoke in the air. And RT's Lucy Gafanov has more now. So, Lucy, what's going on there?
Hi there, Yulia. Well, remember, imagine you're driving to work on a beautiful, calm Friday morning, and suddenly a massive fireball appears out of nowhere in the sky. You're thinking to yourself, is this a plane crash? Is this a rocket attack, a UFO? Well, when it comes to the Urals region in Chelyabinsk, the city in Russia, it's actually a meteor shower. This is what took place this morning. Really stunning images that you're seeing there right now. Now, what we know from officials, according to officials and eyewitnesses, is that a series of explosions, possibly 5 to 6, took place when this meteor exploded in the air, raining down molten hot debris onto the ground. Now, this has caused widespread panic in at least 3 cities. Witnesses reported the walls of houses shaking, windows being blown out, cell phones even reportedly stopped working in some areas. Now, we're still getting the details. Details are still slowly coming in from officials, but what we know so far is that there are no casualties, no massive injuries. At least that's what we're hearing. at the moment, there has been some concern about potential small injuries at a school, unconfirmed. So some schools are reportedly being evacuated. We're also hearing that a zinc factory was hit by a piece of the meteor, but no leaks reported so far. Officials did do preliminary testing of radiation levels in the area. They say that that is okay, but of course tests are going to continue throughout the day. The biggest issue right now is the falling debris and the smoke, the black smoke that people are reporting that is hanging in the air. So very, very shocking developments, probably not the kind of surprise you want to see on your way to work on Friday morning. One interesting fact of note is that the world is closely watching another meteor that's supposed to graze past the Earth later on this evening. That's the size of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. This is an unrelated incident, and of course, as it develops, we will continue to bring you more information. Again, no casualties reported so far. Radiation levels are okay at the moment, but of course, we'll have to keep you up to date as the developments come in.